Hello, so I'm Jennifer Wells, faculty in the Transformative Inquiry Department, and I'd like to introduce you to a very special talk today with two of the early founding faculty in our department, Constance Jones and Daniel Deslauriers. Constance, or Connie, has been here since 1994 and helped found the early iteration of what has become our program today. And Daniel was also at CIIS even longer and joined the Transformative Inquiry Department subsequently. So we're going to talk a little bit, or they're going to tell a little bit about the early history of the Transformative Inquiry Department.
So Connie, I remember meeting Dean Elias, who was the founder of the School of Transformative Learning. And I went to his place and I remember hearing about the vision of this program, how he was so enthused about Misero's work and wanted to bring that work, at CIIS. And right at that time, we had the change of a new president, like Robert McDermott came in, and with a lot of funding from the Lawrence Rockefeller, the Rockefeller family, that he was connected to, and with the leverage of that seed money, they started a new school, the School of Transformative Learning. And I forgot exactly when, but that's when you came in. You came in the early iteration of the program. And so I was wondering if you can talk about your experience joining STL, the School of Transformative Learning, and then how it transformed, and why it transformed and how it transformed to become what it is now, the iteration that we are here, the Transformative Studies program.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you remember that. I came in 1994, and the whole program was started by Dean Elias in 1993. So I was there for the second year, and Dean had come from Columbia. He got his PhD at Columbia with Jack Mesereau. So you're right about Jack Mesereau, who was the brains behind this notion called transformative learning. And Dean wanted to have a piece of transformative learning on the West Coast. So he brought one of the professors. In fact, he brought his chair of his department, who was Elizabeth Castle, with him. So the whole department was founded with Elizabeth Castle, Dean Elias, and Liz Campbell. And then I was brought in the second year. And it was really interesting because I had been teaching in colleges and universities and theology schools since maybe the beginning of the 70s. That's how long I've been teaching in higher education. And here I was in 94, almost 25 years later, with this new curriculum that I'd never heard anything about, but so excited me that we could actually do an interdisciplinary program in which we would produce a curriculum that could serve the needs of all sorts of diverse people, which is exactly what it did from the get-go. That's what we found, is that we could have people that could decide on dissertation topics which weren't totally disciplinary, but could vary across disciplines and could be driven by the inquiry or the passion of their mind, and that would be our prescription for a proper curriculum that could serve everyone. And the main thing was that we would learn from each other in what are called learning communities. And from the very get-go, do you remember how we used to do it? Once a month, we would meet Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was like a marathon. We would meet 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday, and maybe 3 hours on Friday night. And then we would be off for a whole month, and then we'd come back the next month. And that was called the learning community model. And we had what were called cohorts.
So I came in as a teacher of research inside the program. So I came to teach qualitative research, and so I went into one of the cohort that to teach, and what I saw was quite unique because there was a lot of conversation, a lot of intense passion.
So I think you're right. Elizabeth Castle, she was a guiding light, and still has taught many people how to be how to say I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I have something to learn. So teach me.
When did the program become like a fully online program? I remember at that time it was.
We had two programs.
Yeah.
We had the online space, and Alfonso was there, and then I was face to face.
Okay, so the face-to-face meeting every month was one form of cohort, and then there was the online cohort.
Absolutely.
And as I recall, this fully online program is the first online PhD on the known universe. There was no other online
Exactly.
before that, and that was way before the R1 universities started to do their online work. And it was so new that WASC, the accrediting agency, got kind of nervous about, no, you can't do a PhD online, as if it was like.
Exactly.
And then the next year they kind of allowed it, and they saw that that was the future of education. But I remember CIIS was there right at that cusp of creating online learning in the 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah, with
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
a successful learning cohort model. Yeah, so we actually had a learning community in the online space. Now we did get together 1 week a semester, so we did get to know each other a little bit more. Now we're totally online. I think we were experimental, but we were also successful. I mean, we've kept this program going and growing for all these years.
yeah,
And I
over
think-
30 years. Yeah.
Exactly.
Could you both talk a little bit about how the emergence of the department connects with the overall mission and vision of the institution itself, and how the philosophies, the ways of thinking and knowing that began CIIS connected with the emergence of this particular department? Because Danielle, you were in another department before coming into this department, and Connie, you were talking about how you've been teaching in other institutions coming into this space. And both of you were drawn into this almost new department, and it connected presumably to a deeper mission of the institution. Could you just speak a little bit about, from your perspectives, where you felt that this emergence of this new department fit into that larger mission at CIIS, and how it also animated your teaching, your commitment to mentoring, and your commitment to a pedagogical philosophy that was more integrative, more connected, and holistic?
Could I say something about the founding members?
Sure.
Because I'm a sociologist of religion, and one of the things I do is study sociology of knowledge as well as Eastern religion. And I also am interested in the intellectual exchange between East and West. And one of the things that attracted me first to CIIS is its founding. And its founding came from some intelligent people on the West Coast in California who decided that there should be a presence in this state of people who understood Eastern philosophy and Eastern religion. And they could bring that here for a healthy, salubrious influence on this whole country. So the Sanskrit scholar from Stanford and Alan Watts and the head of Esalen, Michael Murphy, all of those people got together and wrote to India and wrote to Aurobindo, who was the most famous philosopher of the 20th century from India, in India. And he recommended this guy who had written his dissertation on Aurobindo's thought. And it was integral philosophy that was Aurobindo's title. So that's how we got this notion of integralism. And we had different names for the institute, starting with Institute of Asian Studies. But then it morphed into integral studies. And I think that's very important for us because we understand something about the notion of integral, although I would have to say we haven't totally pinned it down, right?
And
We've been talking about it for a long time.
And that fellow who Aurobindo recommended was Aridas Chowdhury, and he came here with his wife Beena, and they found the institute. They founded the institute, and at the beginning it was, this place of meeting between East and West. So that was definitely the vector of the integral, to think that the psychology in the East is kind of folded inside of the philosophical system, and there was a recommendation in later on to have a psychology department. So before CIIS was the California Institute of Asian Study, but when they brought psychology as part of, like, we're not Asian study anymore, then okay, well, what will be the name? And so that's how we became the California Institute of Integral Studies. And but even psychology that was based on kind of this integral connection of between East and West, the place of contemplative knowing and meditation and what eventually became positive psychology, would name as positive psychology. I think we were doing this work all through the 70s before it had a name, even within psychology, and transpersonal psychology as well. For me, I think with STL, where it connects was the idea that transformative learning was a way of looking at knowing at the meta level, that you start questioning knowing the same way that within psychology, when you start meditating, you start questioning the nature of self, you start questioning the nature of reality. And now within education, now you start questioning the nature of learning, right? Taking that meta space. That's what then I thought, right away, yeah, this fits. That's why it fits at CIIS. That's the rationale that I made to myself to invite, because I was part of the faculty in another department, say, yes, it has a space. Plus I would think that Dean Elias was kind of a superpower of his own.
Yeah.
Very strong, strong persona, and convincing too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that the integral and the transformative kind of speaks,
Absolutely.
to that kind of epistemological opening between East and West, and then of course with the indigenous, with African knowing, so we all understand it's not just East and West, it's all culture. And so we had a program also that was traditional knowledge program at CIIS at that time, recovery of indigenous mind.
Which was very much aligned with transformative learning. Yeah.
Very close, and I taught also narrative research, stories, because a lot of ways of knowing inside of the indigenous spaces is through story, and that was also something that I was holding in my department that I could share with other departments. So that's one place. One place. That's where I would see the connection, and then I think it was also living through the here I want to say the genius of each faculty joining the department. So every faculty would bring something that was part of the integral whole, and that's why I wanted to invite Jennifer in our conversation, because Jennifer's is work on systems and works on ecology. That was like suddenly became something that was not necessarily foreseen inside of the integral space, but there's no way of talking about integral knowing without talking about system and without talking about the ecological space from which knowing arise. So so maybe we'll make space for that, because you came to Jennifer at the later incarnation of the program. What it was. I think it was already called Transformative Studies Program, the TSD program. But The reason why it changed was both because of financial dissolution of certain program per se. We lost some faculty and we had some contraction in the late 90s. And so we had to kind of reinvent the program. And Alfonso Montuori kind of stepped in and started to open the space. It was not just about transformative learning, was about transformative studies, and then it kind of really opened the horizon of the program.
Yeah. And that's when we took on this whole notion as a pillar, foundational to the program of transdisciplinarity, which means that we are not bound by any discipline, either the axioms of a discipline or the methods of a discipline. So we're multi-paradigmatic and multidisciplinary and multi-methodological. So that's why it's so interesting that we have this almost miraculous situation where we have a curriculum that is designed that a person can bring their own passion, their own interests, their own questions in and use our curriculum to refine and answer their own questions. But I wanted to say one more thing, going back to Fernando's comment about how does our curriculum and our program and our orientation reflect the larger goals of CIIS. I want to say one thing, because I teach self-inquiry. She loves you. I teach self-inquiry, and I want to say that one of the ideas in transformative learning was that you study something outside, but you also transform yourself at the same time. So there's this isomorphic relationship, which, by the way, is also exactly one of the axioms of the esoteric worldview. If you're studying esoteric religion, which is what I do, you'll see that people are saying, I have to change at the very time I'm doing this alchemy out there in the world. So in my laboratory, which is outside myself, I make concoctions and I make new chemicals and whatever. But I am also a laboratory in which new things occur and new combinations. And transformation, transmutation, those things are very central to CIIS's mission and certainly central to our department's mission. Yeah. So, does that fit what you were saying?
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.